Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. So, this is another Quran inspiration, and inshallah today we're going to be talking about Surah Al-Masad. Just a quick overview of how we're going to run the session. I'm going to read the surah first, and then the literal translation of the ayat, and then more about the context behind the ayat and the lessons from it, inshallah. So, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم تبت يدا أبي لهب وتب ما أغنى عنه ماله وما كسب سيصلى نارا ذات لهب وامرأته حمالة الحطب في جيدها حبل من مسد صدق الله العظيم. So the literal translation of the ayat goes as follows. Doomed are the hands of Abu Lahab. Doomed is he. His wealth and his gains shall avail him nothing. He shall have to endure a flaming fire, and his wife, the carrier of firewood, shall have a rope of palm fiber around her neck. So this surah, as you can see, one from Surah Al-Masad, and it's nicknamed Surah Al-Lahab as well. It talks about Abu Lahab, one of the main main villains, the main enemies, the main one of the Mala', one of the biggest problems for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And you'll see him as a constant foe, a constant enemy throughout the seerah, throughout the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He will probably constantly trying to stop the Prophet Muhammad. And Abu Lahab, his real name was Abdullah Uzza ibn Abdul Muttalib, and he was actually the Prophet's uncle. And they were, like I was saying, him and his wife were very hostile to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this surah actually was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a response to an incident that happened. But before we go into that incident, let's talk about Abu Lahab's character, and then into his wife's character, and then we'll talk about the incident that occurred. So I'm going to read a quick thing where Ibn Ishaq related that the following report by Rabi'a ibn Abbad al-Dayli, where he said, when talking about Abu Lahab, when I was young, I once watched with my father Allah's messenger preaching Islam to the Arab tribes, saying, O sons of, and then calling their respective tribal names, I am Allah's, I am a messenger sent to order you to submit and worship Him alone, and invoke nothing else but beside Him, and to believe in me and protect me until I carry out what Allah has entrusted to me. And a cross-eyed, bright-faced man was behind him, and this is Abu Lahab, who used to say after he had finished, after the Prophet would finish calling the people, he would say, O sons of, and then say the tribal names, this man wants you to forsake Al-Lat wal-Uzza, which were the two prominent idols that were worshipped by the polytheist Arabs at that time, and your allies of the jinn and the children of Malik ibn Umas, and to substitute for them these innovations and nonsense he has come up with. Do not listen to him, nor follow what he preaches. And then the person who was relating the report by Rabi'a ibn Abdullah, he says, I asked my father who that man was, and he told me that it was Abu Lahab, the Prophet's uncle. So this is an incident from a Sahabi who saw that during the early stages of Mecca, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was calling people to Islam. This incident is part of his job as a messenger, and also our job as Muslims, is to call people to Islam. And as he's calling people to Islam, a new way of life, what a constant foe, literally legitimately like a shadow to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, always there to call out the Prophet, to say that he's an enemy, to say that he's a liar, to say that he's trying to ruin families, that he's trying to ruin society, lead people astray, a constant foe and enemy. Another instance was when the Hashim clan, which is the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's own clan, under Abu Talib's leadership, decided on grounds of tribal loyalty to protect the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ despite the rejection of the religion he preached. So, and Abu Lahab was the only one who took a different stand, and he joined with the Quraysh instead, and was with them and signed a document imposing what? A complete social and business boycott on the Hashemites so as to starve them out unless they deliver the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ to them. So what you see this story is talking about is that the kind of the perspective that the tribal Arabs back in the day was that this phrase of protect your family, protect your kin, whether they are in the right or in the wrong. That's the perspective they had. And so in this instance, the Prophet Muhammad's tribe, the Hashemites, they wanted to make a pact to what? To still to protect the Prophet Muhammad despite their differences in ideology, their differences in beliefs and things like that, right? Just protect him regardless because he's our kin, he's our blood relation, right? And you notice this is actually a common theme that happens. That blood relation is a really, really big deal in the Arabs. But Abu Lahab, despite being a blood relation, and despite Abu Talib being the leader of their clan, he's the one that refused, joined another clan, which was who? Quraysh, the rest of the Quraysh, and what? Ended up signing a document that completely isolated the Prophet Muhammad and his followers, and Abu Talib joined them as well. Completely isolated them, pushed them out of Mecca, where they were starved, they didn't have no water, no nothing. And they were starved in complete economic isolation, physical isolation, and it was a really, really difficult time. And Abu Lahab was again the leader of that. Now the other part is that's talked about in the surah. You talk about Abu Lahab, but also it brings up his wife. Now an incident about his wife. Abu Lahab, his wife was called Arwa, who was also called Jamil, and she continued her, same thing as her husband, onslaught against the Prophet Muhammad's message whenever possible, and whenever something would happen. And the Prophet Muhammad and Abu Lahab's wife were actually neighbors, and they were close neighbors. And Jamal would try to always hinder the Prophet Muhammad's path. She would throw thorns, sharp woods, and just anything in general to stop him in his path. And that's why you'll notice later on, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the surah, He uses the phrase, the carrier of firewood. It kind of have double meaning. One, firewood is used to fuel Jahannam, but also because this is the kind of thing she would do. She would throw wood, small wooden spikes, woods, and all that kind of stuff to hinder the Prophet Muhammad's path. Point being, you see that both Abu Lahab and his wife were what? One of the huge obstacles in continuously what? Telling everyone, don't believe in the Prophet Muhammad, beating him, making fun of him, slandering his name, everything, right? So now we go into the incident when the surah was revealed. And this is a time when Islam went and changed from being private to public, meaning that rather than being a private just da'wah, which calling people out to Islam privately, it became a public thing. You will go out in the public, tell everyone, join Islam. This is what Islam has to offer to you. It is something that will take you from the constriction of this world to the vastness of this world and the hereafter. It's something that will give you enlightenment, something that will make your life and it will open your eyes, something that will give you calmness in your heart. All these things. It switched from private to public. And this here, we're talking about this incident where Al-Bukhari relates on Ibn Abbas's authority that one day the Prophet Muhammad went out to Al-Batha, which is a large square in Mecca. And there was a hill there, and he climbed it, and he summoned the people of Quraysh. And when they came to him, he addressed them saying, "What? If I were to tell you that an enemy is drawing near and will ask you tomorrow morning or evening, would you believe me?" And the people of Quraysh said, "Yes." Why? Because Muhammad back before, he became a prophet, what was Prophet known for? He was one of Sadiq al-Amin. He was the most trustworthy, the most well-known. Everyone in Mecca knew right away that you would trust him, regardless whatsoever. Even when he became a prophet, people would still trust him with their aman, with their money, with their food, with whatever belongings they had. They would still trust the Prophet Muhammad, even in settled disputes, because of how good and amazing his character was. So Prophet Muhammad was telling them that, for me, who my whole life, you've known me as a person with good character, and I told you that there was an army coming to attack you behind this hill. Would you believe me? They said yes. And then Prophet Muhammad said, oh, listen to me. And he went on, I am warning you Allah's gruesome torments and punishments. So he's saying, there's something even worse than an army coming. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's punishment and torment is in store for you if you don't accept Islam. And I'm warning you sincerely. Just think about that. That was the first official call to go into, now, not first official call, but one of the main incidents that took it, the da'wah, from private to public, calling all the people. And Abu Lahab was there and snapped at him and said, damn you, for this have you called us for. In other versions, says Abu Lahab stood up, shaking the dust off his hands and saying, damn you all day long. And then the surah was revealed, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said again, doomed are the hands of Abu Lahab. Doomed is he. His wealth and his gains shall avail him nothing. He shall have to endure a flaming fire, and his wife, the carrier of firewood, shall have a rope of palm fiber around her neck. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after seeing how ignorant and how persistent he was in stopping the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the word, and he uses the word tabba. Tabba. Doomed are the hands. And this word doomed means tabba, and this means a signature of what? In little Arabic terminology, means signifies failure in cutting off. So imagine that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is cutting you off completely. You're done. And you know what's crazy? Is that, think about it this way. He also said in this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, his wealth and his gain shall avail him nothing. Abu Lahab was one of the mala'. Mala' means the elites of Mecca. The person that everyone feared, that everyone was aware of, that everyone would try their best just to make sure that they wouldn't piss him off or make him angry. This is a person that unfortunately back in the time of Mecca, they had these bad, dirty habits where they would, the people of lower status would ask their wives to go have intercourse with the elites so they can have better kids. And he was one of those elites. He was a person that no one disrespected at all in Mecca, and had the most wealth, the most status, the most fame, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him, doomed as what? Doomed him, and his wealth and his gain shall avail him nothing. And this is being told, not just Abu Lahab, this is all of Mecca is hearing this. All of Mecca is hearing this. And what more do you want to tell the people to understand that Islam is there as something for the mankind, something that where your money and your status, all these things doesn't make a difference. It's how your iman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what makes a difference, what makes you a higher status than someone else in comparison on the Day of Judgment. Another interesting thought, if you think about it, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just said that for sure Abu Jahl is going to go to Jahannam, right? He declared it for sure in this ayah. There's no negotiation about that. If Abu Jahl wasn't so proud, wasn't so arrogant, and he thought to himself, how can I stop Islam, right? If he simply accepted Islam and actually became a Muslim, then he could have possibly disproved what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Qur'an. He could have. But did he do it? Did he accept Islam any time? He didn't. That shows the amount of ignorance, the amount of hate, of how persistent of an obstacle he was. And just let that sink in. Is that if he just wasn't the idea of arrogance is really what brings people down. And we all know the story of Iblis and how he became what he became, shaitan. It was because of arrogance. Because of arrogance. And we see that arrogance continues on, and it's a constant struggle and a constant block, a constant wall for many to accept Islam. Arrogance, status, fame, wealth, these kind of things. So, in conclusion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really He paints a humiliating picture of Abu Lahab, right? And even now, 1400 years later, we still remember that Abu Lahab was a person that defied the Prophet Muhammad, defied Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doomed him. And he's known as one of the worst ever known in history, to this day. And how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's anger and animosity is not filtered. And if a person doesn't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and a person constantly throughout the whole life is a constant thing against Islam, constant enemy, we know what their punishment will be. So inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't make us people that are the complete opposite of this. People that aim to help Islam, people that go and spread Islam, people that show Islam in a good light, people that show Islam as a true and something that will take them out of, again, the constriction of this world to the vastness of this world in the hereafter. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from this humiliation and disgrace that Abu Jahl has to face as for us as well, and enter us Jannah. Are there any questions? It's kind of a heavier topic, and but it's important to us to realize that this is what happened in the Seerah. And these are examples that we should not follow, examples that we should see and learn from them. Examples that when we see these kind of things, we see that let me be the complete opposite of this. So I don't get near it at all whatsoever. And imagine being to the point of how arrogant, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala personally says in the Qur'an, you'll be damned in hell. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us away from this. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us on the straight path, inshallah. Any questions?